Getting nervous about this video, but here we go. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am doing something a little bit more controversial today, I feel like. I'm not a person who's great with confrontation. I feel like even though in my head, I think I love confrontation, but I'm not like the person who goes out to be controversial or the person who kind of like says things just to stir things up. I feel like that's never really been me, but I recently watched the Netflix documentary that everyone's been talking about. Netflix put out this new documentary called SEASPIRACY, and it was basically someone who went undercover and basically talked about how there was this big conspiracy having to do with the fishing industry that none of us were really talking about. I have first heard about it through my friends who watched it, and they were like, oh my gosh, like, did you watch this? Like, it's so crazy. I started seeing some headlines about it. So I was like, okay, when I have time this weekend, I am gonna watch it. So I finally ended up watching it, and I have a lot of thoughts. So as you can probably tell from the title of this video, my number one concern with the way that this documentary was filmed was that I found it to personally be very racist, and I will explain why. I want to first start by saying that I think there are a lot of good things about the documentary, in the sense that, number one, I knew most of the information that was presented. I think the one that I didn't know was that Denmark had this form of whaling called the grind. I did not know that they did that. Aside from that, none of the other information was news to me. But I think it was news to a lot of people in terms of shark fin soup, the whaling practices in Japan, about, you know, how plastic straw pollution is really only like a small amount, that fishing net kind of getting lost in the ocean was a huge source of pollution. Those are just some of the things that they really talk about. All of those things I knew about, but I don't think the general public, like most people, know about, because I also watch a lot of other documentaries, I do a lot of research, and so I'm aware of all of those things. And so I think it did a great job with bringing some of those issues up to the forefront of people and kind of saying like, hey, in case you didn't know, there's actually these huge problems that, you know, maybe you should be aware of. I thought that that was a great part of the documentary. Something else that I do like about the documentary is that they don't try to cover up how horrifying our practices are today when it comes to whaling, when it comes to just how many marine animals are being killed in the fishing process and all of that. I think we need a balance between having the documentaries that kind of show, you know, like a more of a beautiful picture of, you know, like life under the sea versus the realities of today. I think we need both of that, and I think they did a wonderful job of showing that, to really show you like and drive home the point like, hey, this is horrifying practices that we should all be outraged about. I think from those two perspectives, Netflix did an amazing job, and Netflix got what we wanted them to do, which is talk about this documentary, talk about the fact that there's all of these issues going on. I think that was if that was their only goal, then they did it. But kind of like getting into talking about some of the things that I did not appreciate, I wanted to address the entire reason that I'm making this video. I found the documentary to be extremely racist, and there's two main reasons why. Number one, they spent most of the film talking about the poor fishing practices in Asia. They spent some time talking about West Africa too, but then aside from that, they spent I think 5 seconds talking about something that happened in France. And obviously at the end, they kind of closed with showing the whaling practices in Denmark, but they almost kind of painted it in a way where it's like, okay, this could potentially be a form of sustainable whaling. And the entire time, the entire 90 minutes of this, I just felt like I was just getting overwhelmed with all of this anti-Asians propaganda. And if you watched my last video, you know kind of like some of my thoughts with regards to all of the Asian hate crimes, my personal experiences. If you haven't watched it, I will link a link below. But I felt like the entire time was talking about all of these horrifying things that Japan is doing, which I do not disagree. I think their whaling practices are horrific. They're talking about Thailand and the slavery at sea and how corrupt the Thai police is. And they're talking about, like, at one point when they were talking about illegal fishing in West Africa, they were talking about how one of the boats that the Sea Shepherd, which is like a vigilante like watch ship, how the illegal boating practice, or the ship that they caught that was performing illegal fishing practices was from China. And they were showing all of these, all of the locals in Liberia, just, kind of like, almost like being grateful to the Sea Shepherds, vigilante people who were all white, and basically showing them to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry, please give me some food, I'm like starving, please save me, which all of that is true, but it was just the way that was being painted really did not sit well with me. And I think this is more just, I think this is just indicative of the perspective that this film is being made from. All of the experts who were talking were all white, and there was not a single shred of, of insight into how some countries and communities rely on fishing. And they briefly touched on it when the documentary makers were in West Africa, but other than that, like, you didn't really see much of it. There was no history of how important fishing has been to Asian countries, to all of the islands, like in Asia, to Japan, to the Philippines, like all of these other countries, it just, with the history of fishing and that being their source of food. And it was just like this complete oversight of it. And there's nothing else I can say other than the fact that I found it really offensive. I found the entire thing just to be this white man being like, I'm gonna go to other countries and see how horrifying all of their practices are, and be like, I know best, and here's all of my white experts to back me up. At one point, they were in Hong Kong and they were showing the shark fins being sold, which again, I do not agree with, obviously. But it's just like, there are ways to show that, and there's ways to do it without being racist. And unfortunately, even if it was not the intention of the documentary makers, the entire documentary came off to me as being very racist. And it's hard for me to say this because the whole reason why I got into sustainability was because of my love for the ocean, my love for marine animals. I grew up in Los Angeles, in the suburbs, in Palos Verdes, and that was all that I knew. All that I knew was, living next to the ocean and being reminded in school about how important it is to protect our oceans, doing beach cleanups, and it is so integral to my personal identity as a person to protect our oceans, to protect marine animals. Like, it's so integral to me to do anything I can to save our oceans. But the way that this documentary portrayed it made me so uncomfortable, because it made me feel like Asian people are the reason for all of these bad, like Asian people are the reason why we're killing our oceans and we're killing all of the marine population. I just do not approve of the way that it's being made. And this is coming from me as a person who's admitted to multiple times being almost kind of separated from the Asian American community in certain ways because of my own privilege, because sometimes I don't really understand what it means to be an Asian American. Again, I will link you guys to my other videos to watch, but I really, really felt like the entire documentary was an attack on my people. And it's just crazy. It's just crazy that that is something that someone can do in this documentary, and almost I feel like no one's really talking about that. I can appreciate that some Asian countries really do participate in horrific whaling practices. Like the way that they do fishing is just so devastating to the environment, but the way that they did this in Seaspiracy was not the way to go. You can absolutely show both sides of the pictures and do it in a way that is not racist. And unfortunately, the makers of Seaspiracy did not do that. And what they did succeed in doing is create a really racist documentary that only shows white experts talking about these practices, that ends with this idea that I'm so privileged to be able to go vegan and be able to get all of my nutrition, and I'm to be able to do this and say this is the only way to go. That I have a huge problem with. Again, like I've repeated in the beginning and throughout this video, I think that the documentary does do a lot of great things in terms of talking about, hey, like these are all of the issues that we need to be more aware of, and maybe we need to shift around the marketing for talking about sustainability, talking about ocean conservation. I think it was right to talk about those things. I think it was right to say, maybe instead of spending so much of our time pushing plastic straws, we need to be talking about other things that is actually killing the planet more, and trusting people to, you know, like be able to take in that information and realize that it does affect them. But I think that there were just so many other issues with it, and I can overlook all of the issues that they had in terms of, you know, the one-sided picture that they try to paint, the limited information that they really showed with some of like these big claims that they're putting out there. But I cannot overlook that they spent the entire film really just painting Asians in a horrible lighting. I cannot overlook the fact that all of their experts were all white. I cannot overlook the fact that there was just no consideration for just other cultures, other communities, and just other ways of life. I cannot overlook that, and that is my big problem with this documentary, and that is also my personal opinion, being 100% Asian American. That was how I saw it, and I just wanted to share my opinion with you guys as someone who loves the ocean so much, and that was the whole reason I got into sustainability. And I just felt like, you know, hey, it got us talking, and so hopefully this video kind of helps in, you know, giving you guys some, like, just another side of the picture. I think if you were watching that and you were just left feeling like you wanted more, hopefully this was interesting. I would definitely be very open to answering any questions. Difficult or not, I'm an open book, so leave them down below in the comments and I will get to them all. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. I put out new videos every single Wednesday and now sometimes Fridays, and I can't wait to see you guys in my next video. Bye!